I would probably reach out to the person, the young woman before I got so lost. Maybe it was in my teens, maybe my early 20s, and just assure her that whatever is coming, that you're gonna go through, is there to bring you closer to your higher power.
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
Hello, everybody. I am Bryce, and this is my co-host, Liz, and welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast.
Welcome indeed. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for joining us. If it's your first time here, we are really thrilled to be here with another awesome story for you today. And I could not be more honored to introduce our guest today. Gabi Brokaw comes to us from New Jersey. She is a person in recovery. She is a yoga, mindfulness, and meditation instructor, and she's been so kind to come on and offer up her story for the community. So thank you for being here today, Gabi. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Our absolute
really
pleasure.
Great to be here.
Yeah, we're so excited.
Yeah. So the way I like to get things jumped off, just to kind of get a feel for where a person may be at, I like to ask the question, how is your energy today?
My energy today, I am a little nervous. I mean, I think that's normal, right? But otherwise, feeling grounded. I'm feeling really grounded today.
Mm-hmm.
You have a very grounding presence. I feel more grounded because you're here.
Yeah.
I'm always a little nervous.
It does. It feels
and
like
the yoga is working.
Like
it's doing its thing.
Sure is.
Yeah. And I think nervousness, or as some may call it, anxiety, or as I like to call it when I reframe it, excitement, it comes about when we are in the midst of doing exactly what it is that we're supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. Because if we weren't invested in whatever it was that we were doing, we wouldn't feel anything. I'm not tripping when I'm doing something that I'm not called to do because I don't care about the craft. It's not something that excites me. Yeah. But usually the things that excite us, there's a bit of nervousness or a bit of what we would label it as anxiety. But I like to reframe it and call it excitement. So it allows for me, because did you know that the body, like the physical, the biological reaction in our body to fear and anxiety is the same exact reaction that we have when we're excited?
Sure is.
So it's like, for me, it's like, which would I rather be? Would I rather be anxious or excited? So I just kind of lean into let's go with excited. So yoga.
Yeah.
How long have you been practicing yoga?
Practicing a little over, I want to say 6 or 7 years, where I've been practicing regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Teaching about 4 years. So it all happened pretty quickly.
Okay. Was yoga something that you participated in before you found your way into recovery, or was that a tool that you discovered after you entered a life in recovery?
Actually, yeah. I've been clean and sober back in April, it was 10 years. So yoga came into my life. Thanks. Yoga came into my life more fully when I was about 4 years, maybe 3 to 4 years sober. And it came at a time when I was, doing the work and staying on the beam, so to speak. But somehow I lost that connection to a higher power. I lost that spiritual fire that I had when I first got sober, and I found it back on my yoga mat. And so it was like this whole shift that happened. The beautiful thing about it was that I didn't gravitate away from my program of recovery, but I added to it, by allowing myself to be more present and really reconnect to my spiritual side. So, aside from the physical benefits, which are, those are pretty obvious. To most people that practice a little bit, you get that physical benefit of being active and being, breathing and moving. To me, it was more than that. And I honestly, I say this and I share this, that I don't know how much longer, if I had stayed without that spirituality, not sure how much longer I would have stayed clean and sober or had been happy about it, you know? So I might have stayed away from a drink or a drug, but I probably would have been miserable for, so I'm glad that I found it when I did.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So you are definitely among your people. Everybody on this call is a yogi. So me more so leaning in the realm of meditation, but we definitely understand the benefit, and I'm curious as to like the specific benefits for you. But before we get into that, give us a little rundown of your own personal recovery. How do you define recovery? How did you find the way of life that recovery is, and what is like some of your personal story, if you want to dig into that?
Sure, no problem. So yeah, I was a pretty low bottom drunk and addict, and found that gift of desperation that so many of us get at the very end. I'd had many other physical bottoms, jails, institutions, abusive relationships, losing one thing after another, both friends and family connections, as well as, jobs, cars, houses, those kind of things. So when I got sober clean and sober through the program of AA, works for me. So when I went to not my first meeting, but when I was ready to, surrender and give it all up and just didn't have anything else or anyone else or no other ideas about how to live anymore. The drugs and the alcohol weren't working. I had been in jail that week, but that wasn't it. That wasn't my bottom. I kept drinking and drugging after I got out of jail. So, that's not always the thing that's going to break us. It was just this emotional bottom where I had nothing, I had no answers. I felt completely empty. And I didn't want to live anymore. That was where I was. I would say I was suicidal. I didn't, maybe take any steps toward that end, except to, try to numb the pain, which it wasn't working anymore. The drugs, they just weren't working. It just wasn't doing what it used to do. My old friend, alcohol and drugs, were not my friend anymore, So, and they hadn't been for a long time, but I couldn't let go of that idea that it was going to work again. Yeah. So.
It's like an abusive relationship, you just keep, and then just the moment you're ready to give up, there's just that little hint of like, I think I feel a little better when I do this. And then then you're just back right in it. It's amazing how long we hang on to that, what we think is the solution.
That's exactly it. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I'm excited to hear more of your story too, because the beauty of the Phoenix is that we support all pathways as an organization, and you've been on multiple pathways, I mean, like 12-step program for some people, that's it. That's all that is their recovery pathway. For others, myself included, yoga is really the pathway. Yoga was like the thing that I was like, anytime, any day, like there is a yoga class I can get to if I need to get to something. And then for a lot of folks, the Phoenix is the pathway. And I think it's so cool to find people in this community who have, often have like a main one, but then have just this beautiful like diversity of other areas where they find not only like joy in life, but also are able to tie it into their recovery and to make that, a joyful thing. So I would love to hear like how that happened. It sounds like yoga came in as just a reigniting of that passion for sobriety. Were you still doing 12-step meetings at that time?
Yeah. I have never stopped. I've been an active member of AA for 10 plus years. And that is my foundation of recovery. And like you said, for some, that's it. That's okay. That's enough. Some other people find that they go back to church or they go, whatever other outlet they may add into that. And for me, it just happened to be yoga. And then what I love to share with anyone that I'm, teaching through the Phoenix, whether it be meditation or yoga or going on a hike, is that the coolest thing about the Phoenix is it doesn't matter how you're getting clean and sober. It just matters that you show up. And then the cool thing is, although I love AA and I love my path of recovery, I want to have fun too. Like I don't want to be, and there's nothing wrong. And this is not boring to me to be in a church basement reading literature and discussing it. That's important to my recovery. However, when I go and enjoy or take part in or even lead a Phoenix event, we're all in similar boats, but we're not like sitting there talking about all the steps or all the way, like doing the reading. And it's not so strict. It's very inclusive, and it's very, a little bit like I can talk about my drug use when I can't really do that in AA. I can talk about yoga and how I found my God through yoga, and some people, and I can talk about that in AA, but it may not be as readily accepted. So I love the inclusivity of the Phoenix. I love that, all paths are welcome, and it's fun. It's a good time.
Yeah, I have a similar experience to you, Gabi, in that I came in through 12-step, and you still am active in 12-step. Just got my 9 years on the 27th. And I like the 11th step is like my favorite step. And I think that is what like allowed for me to be open to things like the Phoenix, or allowed for me to be open to, sought through prayer and meditation to, gain a conscious contact with God as we understood him. And that kind of set me about on a journey, that and all like the restructuring of who it was that I was as a person. Like I was a habitual finger pointer always. It was always somebody else's fault. I didn't know anything about my side of the street or taking inventory or anything like that. So desperation plus 12-step came in, restructured me. And then 11 steps set me about my journey to discover, like, what do I care about? Like, what does this thing mean to me? What is the context of this experience in my life? And as I'm sure like as we continue to develop and evolve in recovery, like the context shifts because we have more experiences that we don't have to drink for. And in that we learn more things, we become wiser, we have some of these experiences under our belt. And so I'm curious as to how, if is yoga one of the first things? You say 4 years in, yoga kind of popped up, but were there other things that you found along the way that kind of helped you to be able to show up for life on life's terms and discover who it is that you are as a person?
You're saying before yoga, or
before, after, aside from?
In addition to,
well, as you kind of said, Bryce, and thank you. That's beautiful. I love the 11th step analogy. That's just it's beautiful.
What is the 11th step? Sorry to interrupt. I'm not a 12-step person.
You want to say it?
Saw through prayer and meditation to, and I'm this is not verbatim, but saw through prayer and meditation to like cultivate or expand on our conscious contact with God as we understood him. So like seeking through prayer and meditation to build a relationship with something bigger than us.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So before I found that spirituality through yoga, I'm a very nature loving person. So that was where I was finding it. My first year of sobriety, I lived really close to the water, and I was told I met, this woman who became my sponsor and still is to this day. And she just has such a beautiful outlook on spirituality that, it's not about the God that you were maybe raised with, or it's not about going to church or religion. It's about finding, as Bryce so eloquently put it, something bigger than us that we can connect to. And to me, at that time, like it was just the water or the bay or the ocean, and then music that I had been listening to my whole life was like, I was hearing it with new ears again, at the age of 41, when I got sober, I was like, I never heard that before. And I've been listening to it for 20 years. So like all these things started to open and pop. And, that's where I found God, like in those things. It wasn't in church. It wasn't maybe even in necessarily an AA meeting, although I know it exists there as well. The 12 steps, we're a fellowship of people that are in the same boat. So there's spirituality there. But I think that the things that helped me early on were just being awake. All of a sudden I was awake. Like I saw things, I was able to leave a long-term abusive relationship, like almost effortlessly, before I'd hung on with claw marks because that's what I needed. And that's what I thought was love. And sobriety gave me that freedom to just say, that's not for me. Like, I know, like, start to know who I really am and what I deserve and what my higher power has in store for me. Although I have no idea still, but I know it's not a life. I know it's not a life clouded by, abusive situations, whether it be people or substances. So, so starting to see that, and becoming a person of dignity, that was huge for me. I wasn't lying. I mean, it took work, but I wasn't lying, cheating, stealing, all those things. I wasn't acting like a degenerate human being. And wow, that was a big change for me. So it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
And it's the continuous evolution of showing up in such a way that allows for us to expand and unfold in ways that maybe we never had. And I'm super like, so now I'm like itching with curiosity around like this moment at the 4-year mark where it's like, because I've had the experience of like some lulls, and a lot of time, like when I'm talking to people that may just be getting into or starting this journey in their lives, like I make sure I express, like, I would be lying to you if I told you it gets easier. I don't think it gets easier. As a matter of fact, it probably gets harder. But the beauty about it is we get stronger. But in that strength cultivation, we have to have like these experiences to cultivate the strength. And some of those experiences is like, like I'm lost. Like I don't know what's next. Like what was working isn't working anymore. Like, and pushing through that in such a way that allows for us to see, how to cultivate new things that can sustain us moving forward, because we're becoming new people. We're having new circumstances. There's new context. So I'm very curious as to like that 4-year mark where you got to that point to where it's like, like the things weren't working anymore that were working. How did you handle that? And where did you find the strength and the courage to continue to push forward and cultivate something new?
So I think I just got to that point where I was really uncomfortable again, really uncomfortable. I was searching, I can remember sharing, I can remember this like it was yesterday. I remember sharing in a meeting that I still go to, a 12-step meeting, and everyone else was talking about their connection with their higher power. And I was getting like angry because I felt like I lost mine. I'm like, why? I'm doing all the right things here, like I'm showing up, I'm helping, I'm of service. I go to like all these meetings, I'm not drinking, when in my natural, I've been told, that as an alcoholic and addict, my natural state is to be drunk or to be high, so for me to not live like that. And I felt like I was doing all the right things. I had worked through the steps, I was doing the work, and it, I shared at this meeting that like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but it's like, and I didn't feel like God left me or like my higher power was gone. I just felt like there was something wrong with the communication. The connection was gone. And I was in a really challenging job at the time. And I think those things that happen, like Bryce said, that force us to either change or, it was like, I'm either going to go this way, go up and elevate, or I'm going to totally relapse. I mean, that's kind of where I was at that point. And I thought that with that much time, 4 years, whatever it was, that I would be like this higher being, and that life would be like so good and easy, and I would be so nice to everybody, and I would love everybody and have patience and tolerance, and that wasn't happening.
Shocked.
And it still is a work, it still takes work. And it doesn't get easier. Bryce is right about that. It doesn't, because the more we get to know ourselves, and the more we want to know ourselves and want to know that spiritual connection with other people, I think the more we're challenged to change and get out of our comfort zone. So that's not always easy. Sometimes I just want to be in the comfort zone, but that's where the comfort zone ends me up there, spiritually reaching or spiritually lost, and I'm not supposed to be there. I figured that out. So
So, and then Liz, I know Liz is about to beat me up because we have this connection now after doing this show for so long that it's like, you can tell when Liz, it's time for Liz to ask a question and it's time for Bryce to ask a question. But I'm so curious right now because and especially if I have like a fellow 12-stepper here too. But like who has had experience with the Phoenix, who has had experience with spirituality aside from 12-step, and has had around the same length of time as me, and there's these things that I'm running into. So I got deep into personal development. I got deep into law of attraction. I got deep into metaphysics. I got deep into quantum physics. I got all this stuff. And like this spiritual stuff like really works in my life, and so and this may be a conversation you haven't had with yourself, and just let me know if this is a conversation that you don't want to have. But I'm in a season of my life where, so like you said that, as we say around the tables, like my natural state is to be drunk, and rhetoric like that like worked for me when I first got to the tables, because it's like, oh, like it was like epiphanous, if that's the way you say epiphany, like in a way.
Good word,
yeah,
I think.
I like it.
But it was like, oh, and then all I had to do was practice the opposite of like what my natural inclinations were at that point in time because of who it was that I was then. But now today, when I say those things, even when I come to the table and say, hi, I'm Bryce, I'm an alcoholic, like it's almost like not a representation of where I feel that I am in this season of my life. So I found like maybe within the past 4 or 5 months, like I'll say, hi, I'm Bryce, and then pause, alcoholic, just so that I'm not saying I'm because I know the power of like declaring, of like embodying, and it's just these certain things that as I continue to evolve and my understanding in life continues to evolve, like what it is that I need continues to evolve. And I just wanted to know if at all any, like, are you having experience with some of those things where like, because even saying like my natural state is to be drunk, like I don't feel that way no more. I did at one point, but now it's like, no, my natural state is to be okay. And then I'm able to look back with compassion, like, and then even then when my natural state was to escape, like I just wanted to feel good. Like, of course I would. Who wouldn't want to feel good? I was trying to modulate my nervous system. Like I was dealing with trauma and I just wanted to be okay. Like, like we all deserve to be. I just didn't know the best. I didn't know how to do it, how I do it now. Right. Mm-hmm. So like, do you find that there's some things that when you first came in a 12-step that may have been rhetoric that served you, like don't serve you now? And is that something that you pay attention to?
Yeah, definitely. That might be one of them. Perfect example, because like I said, that was around the 4-year mark when I started recognizing that I was living differently, that I wasn't, that I didn't reach out for substances to soothe me, like you said, to soothe the nervous system and to regulate myself, but I didn't have anything else either. So I was like in that in-between place. Mm-hmm. So when I found, when I found that yoga worked for me in that respect, and then I learned how to take care of that myself. No, I don't think anymore that my natural state is to be drunk, but I think that I will always remain an alcoholic. And I think part of it, we had a conversation with one of the women that I work with, Swansea's, one of the women that I sponsor in AA. And she became a yoga teacher. So she had all these existential questions about like, why do I have to identify myself as an alcoholic? I'm so much more, and I'm not this. And I'm like, I get that. I do. I 110% get it, because I'm not just that, none of us are just that. However, for me at this stage, I think when I say it at a meeting, it's more out of maybe respect for the program itself. And it's not a disrespect to myself or to anyone else that is more than that, because all of us are so much more than that. I've been at meetings where to say that you're also an addict is not acceptable. So, mm-hmm. And I'm that too. So, do I act on those things anymore? No, I don't, I don't. But if left to my own devices, without a program for me, without community, and without a spiritual program or spiritual practice, I'm like, I think I mentioned this earlier, I may not drink for a long time, or I may not pick up a drug for a long time, but I'm going to be a raging lunatic, and I'm not going to be nice to be around. All my other character defects are going to start rearing their ugly heads. I'm going to start maybe lying, stealing, cheating before I even pick up a drink or a drug. So to me, like it's also just a reminder, like that one word reminder of all the things that are just waiting if I don't continue to do the work. All the little things, like they say, play the tape. That's another AA slogan, play the tape. So if you're thinking about picking up a drink, and I say this to my sponsor says it to me, and I say it to any of the women that I work with that have a little bit more time, that aren't necessarily in danger of getting high or drunk, but that they're going to make a bad choice, like that's going to alter their spiritual condition. Like maybe it's, dating a certain person or taking a job that is like selling their soul, things like that. So I asked them, like, play the tape. Like, how are you going to feel when you make this decision? And that's what my sponsor says to me too. So it's not always about like, play the tape. What's going to happen? Like you said, Bryce, like when I first got sober and I was reminded of like, what if you pick up a drink, play it through, what's going to happen? Like you're going to be driving to whatever the nearest city is to get other substances. And then it's going to be like a week-long bender. And who knows, you're going to end up in jail. That's what happens when I pick up a drink. So I can look at it now more with like, what happens when I start that slippery slope down and like into bad thoughts and then bad words and then bad behavior. I think there's a Buddhist way of looking at that. And I'm not an expert and I'm not an actual Buddhist myself, but that your thoughts become your words and your words become your actions. And so, what we think is really important. What's going on in our heads is really important because it can manifest in so many ways, good and bad. And I think I went off on a way off on a tangent from what you asked me, but
we love tangents.
Oh, good. I am the tangent queen.
That's the structure of our show is based on organic conversation that is peppered by tangents, and they're usually the best. Those are the sound bites that we can pull out for when we promote. First of all, Bryce, I adore you. I would never want to beat you up, but thank you for knowing what I want to talk. That makes me feel so good that we have that connection. It's so interesting to hear both of you because I feel so connected to, your story when it comes to yoga and that spiritual piece and having that higher power connection on the yoga mat and having like, that's where you found it because I'm not a 12-step person. Yoga to me, however, is a very spiritual practice. And I don't use the same language typically as 12-step just because it's not part of my world. But, there's so much that makes sense to me, that connection with something bigger. And I feel like there's so much about that is like trust, like a trust in playing that tape forward, to be able to trust yourself to know what the next step is going to look like, to have that like really self awareness and recognition of like, this is the person I am. And, and I love this person that I am. And I'm going to take care of this person as I am by keeping an eye on, where my thoughts are going and taking care of myself so that that next step isn't to, drive to the liquor store or something. And that just looks different for every single person that we talk to and every single person who's in recovery, because we're not necessarily, as much as, 12-step and a lot of different programs is saying this, this adopted language and this book and this structure, that's really important, but it's really all a tool to learn the roadmap that's inside of you. And which is usually the thing that we've ignored and numbed for so long. I know for me, getting on the yoga mat was finally being brave enough to look inward and to really recognize like all the parts of myself and to see them and allow them to be whole. And part of that too, I think, like I have 1,000 different thoughts right now, but one of them is I'm just remembering like that first year for me and people telling me, you're on the pink cloud right now. Cause I was in that moment where I was like getting up at 4 a.m. because I felt so great and the mornings are amazing. And I'm just got my mornings back. And people telling me like, well, enjoy it now because that goes away and it starts to get really hard again, and being like, well, that sucks. And then a year in, having it just start to feel a little bit like the rug came out from under me and being like, okay, well, I guess this sucks. And kind of like starting to have those wheels turning about like, how can I convince the people in my life that I'm okay now? And I think I can probably drink again and it's going to be okay. And then having those moments on the yoga mat and, connecting with communities and being more honest about the way I was thinking and feeling. So I was able to not have that happen, but find a different path, like a different way that I was able to continue to stay in recovery and stay in this really joyful life. And so I think for folks that are getting to that point or are either like in that period of time where they're feeling really good and maybe afraid of it ending, or at that point where they're like starting to feel like, wait, why isn't this so fun anymore? Life is hard. Like I still have to pay the bills, things like that. Like, I think there's a way there's just so much hope, because even though life doesn't ever get easier because life is life. I think just knowing yourself, like loving yourself, just like a relationship, you're still going to run into hard things, even with this person that you love. But the more you love, the more you know them, the more you know each other and how to like take that step forward. And there's like a trust there that allows that to be just like safer. So anyways, those are all that talk about a tangent and a ramble. That was what all the things that were going through my head. So I guess I was wondering, like, just as far as your relationship with yourself, does that ring true for you? Like, and when you think about like your relationship with yourself, do you find that that's like, are you your same self across all these areas of your life? Like when it comes to 12-step meetings, when it comes to the yoga mat, when it comes to your work with the Phoenix?
Wow, that's a good question. That's a deep one. So I want to say yes and no, because, do I show up as my authentic self? I hope so. I really hope so. I think I'm still learning how to do that. I think I'm still learning. Do I interact with each of the people in each of those groups? Maybe not exactly, to be honest. I think it depends on the day too, like where I feel more at home. And I think that's just what my spirit needs more of on that day. Sometimes it is amongst a group of yogis, whether I'm teaching or taking a class. There's other times when I walk into, say, my home group, my AA home group, where I just feel like, these people, the 80-year-old guy that's been sober for 50 years and the 20-year-old kid that just walked in the door and myself right in the middle, we're all the same. Like we're all, they may never step foot on a yoga mat ever. They may never go on a hike with me to the Phoenix, but they've been through the same like heartaches and the same, emotional trauma or the same pain that I have being alcoholics and addicts. Doesn't matter what their circumstances are. And I used to, because that's a good question too, Liz, because before I got sober and even into sobriety, like I would always, we know we're great at being chameleons, right? So we put on the face that we think that the person in front of us wants to see. And so like peeling away those layers and those veils as well is a constant, evolution for me. I believe that if I show up the way I am authentic in that moment, it may be different from the way I was last week, but I'm still learning. I'm still learning about myself. I'm still learning who I am, still learning how to be of maximum service to my fellow human beings. So it doesn't always look the same. And I feel like if I look back and say like, oh, I wasn't there a week ago, which, are we ever really there? Do we ever arrive?
Just a journey.
I hope not, but I think it's, I think that I'm getting better at showing up. I think there's starting to be less difference, less severance or less separation between each of the lives, not the lives that I lead, but each of the places that I find my recovery. I think there's starting to become more
integrated.
Yes.
Integrated.
Thank you.
It's so interesting, like that process of integration, because maybe we come into recovery, and so I like to call us travelers, and nothing is better than anything else, right? Like some people like will tap into something that's like, yo, this is my something, and just ride it out. But what I found is like when I came in, I was into music. Like I was into music even more. I thought I wouldn't be able to do music anymore just because, but what turned out was like, oh, I never even had, like you said, I was listening to music and I didn't hear that before. So here I am making music. It's like, yo, I didn't know I could do this like this. I didn't know it was a connection like that. But that required me to be in environments where there was smoke everywhere and drinking everywhere. So I wouldn't like sometimes like I would just have to discern who from my AA group that I would invite to any of my shows because like it's gonna be a room full of smoke and we gonna be kind of rowdy, and then so you have all these. What I find is like then I got into meditation and I got into spirituality, I got into personal development, and so what I found was like I have all these communities and I built all these communities and I can travel all these communities, and unlike how before. Whereas like I had to put a mask on and like when I'm in this room, like I got to make sure that I'm this person. But sometimes I might show into the wrong room with the mask from the other room on and be like, who are you? I don't even know who you are, right? But now it's like just because I can talk and be and express in the music community in a different way that I can in my personal development community, in a different way that I can in my 12-step community, in a different way that I can in my Phoenix community, doesn't mean that these aren't all expressions of the one. And like learning to integrate that person in such a way that is true to ourselves, like is, I think, a noble part of the journey, and knowing that there isn't any falsehood in exploring all of these different interests. And so for you to explain it like that, I think that's very beautiful and very poetic. And I think the more that we show up, the more that we learn how to integrate that person. And, nothing's wrong with, having somebody today I might, I might want to start cooking. And now like I need a cooking community because I need somebody to talk about ingredients, like how my man from Ratatouille did, the rat did, he synced the colors and synced the ingredients,
That's the chef you go to. That's amazing.
So no, I think it's a beautiful process. And I'm glad that you were also led to the Phoenix community, and that we were able to kind of get to have some of your energy contributed here. So what has being a facilitator for Phoenix programming, how has that been for you? And how has that added to your life? And how has that added to your recovery? And how do you think that helps sustain other people's recovery?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was actually kind of, my brain was starting to think on this as, not that I wasn't paying attention to you, but my brain, how our brains do. My brain's like thinking about something that you mentioned, and
superpower.
Constantly thinking. Is that the cool thing about the Phoenix? One of the many cool things about the Phoenix is I get to show up as, and those two worlds come together. The yoga and the recovery come together so beautifully at the Phoenix, and I can show up and say, my name's Gabi and I'm a recovering alcoholic addict, and then teach a yoga class to them. I can't do that in an AA meeting, and I can't do that in the studio that I teach at, that is just, a yoga studio. So that is really cool that I get to combine two of my, things that have supported me and nourished me over the years. And so as I was doing a training with a woman that volunteered for the Phoenix, and it was unrelated to recovery, and it was unrelated to the Phoenix. And then for some way, she started sharing a little bit about the work that she did. And my ears perked up because I thought I had to keep it. At that point, I still had to keep it separate. Like the yoga people don't know that I'm in AA, and the AA people kind of like roll their eyes when I tell them that I'm a yoga, what I do in yoga. And I was like, oh, this woman, she probably gets it, And however, she was not in recovery herself, but she gives back to the community. She's got family and friends, and so she gives back teaching free yoga classes. And so I was like, I want to do that. I really want to do that. That's like my goal. And I don't even think was I a yoga teacher yet? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But timing wise, it doesn't matter. And she connected me with Chris, and then we went back and forth and figured out some things to do. And I was honored to be able to, volunteer and give a whole different community an experience that I had been. Maybe if that happened to me in early recovery, I wouldn't have had that. I know everything happens for a reason, but it's just an honor to be able to share what recovery and yoga have done for me, and nature too, because I do lead some nature hikes when it's not so stinking hot out. It's like 100 degrees here today, so
gosh, it's not even that hot here. I'm in Florida. It's not that hot.
I think they said like the heat index is 100. So I'm by the shore. I'm by the not right by the shore. If I was, it'd be nice and cool, but I'm like, a couple miles away. Yeah. And what I just hope that maybe, someone that I connect with through the Phoenix either doesn't have to struggle as long or as hard as I did in active addiction and alcoholism, because now like so many people aren't making it at all. And that breaks my heart, And so maybe 10 years ago it was a little different, but with what's happening, in especially the drug world today, so I've lost people, in recovery that, had one slip and they're gone, so not to turn this into a very sad moment, but if it worked for someone like me, like I was bottom, like I was, hopeless. And if it worked for someone like me, and that maybe they have a shot too, and like just hold on for another day and reach out and find community and find the people and find the things that you love to do. It doesn't matter if it's macrame or, climbing mountains, it's there's people that want to do it with you. Yeah. And I don't know how to do either of those two things. So just a disclaimer is just.
So don't go to Gabi for macrame. Got it.
I did the indoor rock climbing once and it was fun, but I'm not, I won't be teaching that class anytime soon. But I usually share that with the people in at a rehab facility that I teach yoga to through the Phoenix. And
go
ahead.
I was just going to say, do you find, because I instructed a inpatient facility too, and I have to remember to say in those classes, in a yoga class, like, that yoga has been a huge part of my recovery. And, I say the same thing that you said, like, it's the honor of my life to be able to share it, it's something that helped me so much to be here and sharing it with you. And so often folks that I'm instructing are like, you're in recovery? Like, it's amazing when you're in that dark place, everybody else you just assume has just got it all together and could never have been in that dark place. So I think we sit here and think like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. But those folks right now who are trying to do it so often are just like, you weren't as bad as me. And it's like, you don't owe anyone your story. Nobody does. That's, your personal experience is yours. But I think when you do feel empowered or called to share it the way that you do, and it's just like the amount of hope that can inspire in somebody is just incredible. That will reach people, that will change somebody's life, save somebody's life.
Because I did feel that way at one point, Liz, when I had tried AA, I tried recovery years before I got sober. And I thought, I've heard people say, and you probably heard this too, Bryce, if you go to enough meetings, that I wasn't that bad. When they would go to a meeting and they'd say, "Oh, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not that bad. I'm not as bad as them, or they're worse than me."
Yeah.
I was the opposite. I thought, okay, I thought there's no help for me. I'm way worse than any of these people I'm meeting. I'm way worse. Like, some of the women that I met initially, they were talking about, drinking wine in their house. I'm like, no, I go out and I get all kinds of drugs and I hang out with bad people until all hours of the night. And I go to bars that open up at 6 a.m. I don't stay home and drink wine. That wasn't my story. So I couldn't identify with, I didn't think that it was for me. And so years and years and years of not thinking that recovery was for me, because I was different. We've all heard that before, right? I was different. You don't get it. I don't, I need to do this. Otherwise I'm good. I don't know what my otherwise was, but I was like, there's no other way for me to live except high and drunk, And so somehow I heard someone, and this is why I share my story easily and readily and openly, is because the first meeting that I went to when I actually did get sober, a woman shared her story and I felt that she had understood what I was going through. And she said she had some time. It was maybe even a year, but at that time when you're brand new, it's like, oh my God, a year is so much. It is.
Lifetime.
And it gave me that little, like you said, that little bit of hope that, hey, like she is doing this and she felt the way I feel right now. And she is moving through that. And there's a room full of people here that want to help me do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it finally, like, something just clicked, And so now I just, I'll share my story with anyone that asks because there it is. It could be a matter of life and death to someone. And it's no joke that, people die from this disease constantly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think there's the mechanism of comparison that, we're instructed to be aware of when we first come around the 12 step. And we're also instructed to let go of, look for relation versus comparison. And I'm not gonna lie, like my level of desperation when I first came around was probably what destroyed that comparison. Because as much as I wanted to compare, like I don't send me back there, because I came from there and I do not want to go back. So whatever, even if I found like one of my best friends when I first got to the program was like a 40-year-old white woman. And here I am, I'm a 24, 25-year-old kid from the hood. And it's just like, but her story was so like similar in like the crazy things that we've experienced to mine. It's like, we just had so much to talk about. And so I think there's a lesson in there. There's a nugget in there where it's like, because I've also worked, I worked with a guy, and when he first came in, he was doing the comparing thing. Like, like I didn't have some struggles, but I ain't did none of this or nothing like that. And he was talking to a mentor of his at that point. And he was like, I think I'm gonna have to do something. I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna have to hurt. I'm gonna have to experience something to really like get it, like it seems like y'all are getting it. And he was my sponsee, and he told me like the click that had happened when he told this mentor of his that, and the mentor was like, so is that what you really want to do? Like you really want to like kill somebody? You want to kill somebody? You want to kill
Sounds
yourself?
like a good time.
Is that what you need? And then like for him, like it clicked like, oh wait, actually no. Actually, no, I don't want to do that. And I don't want to have to do that. He had a nudge from the judge and he stuck around, just because it clicked for him like that. So if you're out there listening and you're feeling that, you're looking and it's like, well, they not from the hood like I am, or they older than I am, or they don't have 12 kids, or they don't, have to work this dead end job, or they don't, like, nobody understands. Like, know that is an inner mechanism that may be preventing you from the solution that's available to you, because it's available to all of us. And I just want to throw that out there, just kind of piggyback off what you shared, Gabi. And so to kind of like lead us out here, Liz has this wonderful question that there's so many different variations of that I'm excited about the variation today. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it to Liz for the special question of the day to cap this episode off with.
Excited too. I don't know how it's going to come out either. We'll see. It's really not. It's one that I'm sure you've heard before. If you could look back at all the versions of yourself, maybe it's the version of you prior to recovery, maybe it's middle of recovery, maybe it's yesterday, and you could reach back with a little soup can telephone and send that person a message, whether that is words of wisdom or just some loving thing, what would you say to that person?
Oh, wow. That is a deep question. I would probably reach out to the person, the young woman before I got so lost. Maybe it was in my teens, maybe my early 20s. And just assure her that whatever is coming, that you're going to go through, is there to bring you closer to your higher power, is there to bring you closer to your true purpose. And I wouldn't change anything, like I don't, maybe I would have made some different choices if I'd known what I know now, but I had to do what I had to do to get to be where I am. I'm a slow learner, and I need to get, crawl through the mud and the muck to come out the other side, because that's just my journey. So I would tell that young woman that it's going to be okay, that you are, in loving hands, and that one day, if you hang on, your purpose will be revealed, and you'll feel at ease and at peace and comfortable in your own skin, like I kind of do today. So.
Well, that might be my favorite answer to that question. I get tears in my eyes because that is just such a loving thing. And if you're listening and not watching, just like I don't know, that's just something that came over your face just then. It really just felt like you really were talking to that young person, and just to say like, it's going to be okay. Like this is all the way it's supposed to go. And you got it. That's, I think I need to hear that. Thank you.
I love the process of recovery. The context of what even the word recovery means continues to grow, develop, and evolve as I continue to live and have experience. And like you mentioned, some of the people who haven't made it, it's just given me a context on energy. Energy is one of those things that doesn't have as much of a boundary as we may be able to see with our eyes. So, there's a lot of people that, in my experience, aren't alive to tell their story, that now their story are a part of mine. And there's a lot of people that are here telling their story, like you, Gabi, that now your story becomes a part of mine. And now as I move with the benefit of being able to know you, have conversation with you, and everything that you've shared thus far. So we really appreciate your contribution of energy today. And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both of you, for amazing questions. So you've brought my you've awakened some thoughts within me. Awakened some questions within me as well. So it's really been a wonderful experience.
So glad. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you both for being here. Thanks to our listeners for being here. Please be sure to hit that subscribe on whatever podcast player that you're listening to. And if you'd be so kind to rate and review, it really helps folks to find the podcast. And please be sure to join us next time. Don't miss a single episode. We're here every Tuesday.
Catch you next time.
Thank you for being part of the community.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you, or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.